I welcome you to part 3 of our 9-week series on human rights in the Inland Northwest, or the history of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. On show number 3, you're going to see the years 1984 through 1986, and this was taped 14 years ago. Later we'll have programs that were taped in 2005, but I hope you enjoy today's program in this segment on the work of human rights by this human rights organization located in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
The passage of the anti-malicious harassment legislation, the successful prosecution of Keith Gilbert, and the reduction in the number of incidents of harassment, graffiti, and distribution of hate material led members of the task force to assume that little effort would be needed to sustain these positive developments. Also about this time, the personal lives of some of the leaders of the task force took them to live in other cities. Thus, a period of inactivity took place from April 1983 to January 1985. The white extremists, however, were anything but inactive. From Seattle, Washington to Denver, Colorado, from Ukiah, California to Sandpoint, Idaho, the Bruder Schweigen I, or Silent Brotherhood, launched a national crime spree aimed at financing and fomenting revolution.
By the fall of 1983, the Bruderschweigen, or Silent Brotherhood, better known as the Order, was formed by 9 members and launched a crime spree that involved robbery of an adult bookstore in Spokane, Washington, counterfeiting money, armored car robbery of $500,000 from an armored car in Seattle, Washington, bomb damages to a Jewish synagogue in Boise, Idaho, the murder of Walter West, an Order member, because he was perceived as a security risk. The murder of Alan Berg, a radio talk show host in Denver, Colorado. Another armored car robbery netting $3.6 million in Ukiah, California. A shootout with FBI agents near Sandpoint, Idaho, after which Gary Yarborough flees. Found in Yarborough's home is a MAC-10 machine gun that was used to kill Alan Berg. A Missouri state trooper was killed by Order member David Tate. Another trooper was wounded in that gun battle. Aryan Nation Security Chief Bud Cutler was convicted of 4 counts of murder for hire. There's a bombing of adult theaters in Seattle, Washington. And there were arson. The Odyssey of the Order left a wake of criminal destruction in its path. Found as evidence or discovered and confiscated during the FBI investigation were over $4 million stolen from the robberies, an enemy hit list that included federal judges, federal prosecutors, FBI and federal agents, local law enforcement officers, and human rights leaders. Huge stockpiles of weaponry, ammunition, and explosives were recovered. Intelligence files of law enforcement officers were confiscated. Plans for more acts of violence, such as blowing up the Boundary Dam in Seattle, Washington, additional robberies of the Brinks main terminal in San Francisco, California, the disruption of shipping lanes in Puget Sound, Washington, by using laser-guided rockets and missiles, and the poisoning of municipal water supplies.
According to one task force member, the national outbreak of criminal acts by members of the Order, or Silent Brotherhood, again focused media attention on the white extremist compound at Hayden Lake, Idaho. North Idaho was being touted as not only the birthplace of the Order, but also as the home of both the Order and the Aryan nations. This negative publicity moved local realtor and early task force member Marshall Mend to reactivate the task force in 1985.
I saw a serious problem. What this kind of publicity could do, not only to our area but to our entire state, would be devastating. People from all over the country were picturing Coeur d'Alene and Hayden Lake as communities either under the siege of Nazi stormtroopers or a community that was supportive of white supremacy and racism, neither of which was ever close to the truth. I saw this publicity saying to the world, if you're a minority or if you're a person who believes in human rights, then Coeur d'Alene, Hayden Lake, and North Idaho is not a good place for you to go or to live. It was also saying that if you're a racist, a bigot, or a hate monger, then Coeur d'Alene, Hayden Lake, and North Idaho welcome you. That's what it was saying, but that was not true. I think North Idaho had a population of about 80 to 100,000 people. There were about 60 racists at most, and that's before many of them were sent to jail. They had no community support whatsoever. I knew something had to be done, so I went to see Sandy Emerson, who was the executive director of the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce. He was also involved in the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations before it became inactive. He also recognized the problem. What to do? We needed a leader, someone who couldn't be intimidated, someone with credibility and integrity, a person who could be the spokesman for the task force and our community. We both came up with the same person, Father Bill Wasmuth, a local Catholic priest at St. Pius X Catholic Church. Sandy and I went to see Father Bill. We explained the situation. I said, Bill, we're going to reactivate the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. We need a leader and a spokesman, and you have all the qualifications. He looked at me and said, what qualifications do I have? Well, you're not married, you have no kids, so you don't have to worry about them being harassed by the Aryans, and you live in a brick building. You'd be perfect for it. We laughed. He accepted. Of course, besides those qualifications, he was also an eloquent speaker, which made him perfect to be our spokesman, and he had the respect and was held in high regard by the entire community. Besides being a parish priest, he was also active in the community and was on the board of directors or involved with the YMCA, hospice, cult awareness, the Women's Center, and the list goes on and on. We had our first meeting. We outlined our problems and talked about our goals. I was made chairman of the Community Response Committee. Here are some of the problems and goals we identified. Number one, our community image was being destroyed by the media, linking the order and the Aryan nations to Coeur d'Alene, Hayden Lake, and the entire state of Idaho. Number two, we saw minorities being discouraged from moving to our area by these media stories. Number three, we saw these same articles encouraging racists, bigots, and other hate groups to move into our area. It was depicted as a haven for these people. Number four, we saw it affecting the quality of life of the citizens of our area. Number five, we saw both a social and an economic problem. Question, do we face the problem publicly and add to the publicity, or do we keep quiet and wait for the problem to go away? The task force came to a conclusion. Silence gives consent. We must address the problem publicly. Nazis never go away because a community is silent. Now, there were some of our community leaders who did not agree with our conclusion. They were wrong. We took a stand. We would stand up for human rights for all people, regardless of race, color, creed, or religion. We would let the world know that Coeur d'Alene, Hayden Lake, and North Idaho were for everyone. We believed that by taking this stand, we would improve the quality of life for all of our citizens, and it would have direct and indirect benefits for the community. One of the crucial decisions to emerge from going public like this was to join forces with North Idaho College. We went to see Tony Stewart, who was on the original task force. Tony is also the coordinator of North Idaho College Popcorn Forum and was the head of the political science department. we asked Tony if he would co-sponsor a program featuring a speaker on human rights. 2 days later, he called us and said he wasn't going to put on a program with a human rights speaker. He said we were going to have a week-long human rights symposium. He titled it, "The Problems of Racism." The caption under that was "Prejudice and Progress." There were 6 keynote speakers, including Julian Bond from Georgia, Ada Deer from Michigan, and Idaho Governor John Evans, who I think said it best when he said, "To be tolerant of prejudice and bigotry is to be a part of it." This was just the beginning of our association with North Idaho College. Since 1986, we've put on an annual Martin Luther King Day celebration. Usually it's the biggest in the state. And in conjunction with Tony Stewart, we have produced 35 half-hour TV human rights programs, which were broadcasted on public television. These programs are on videotape and are available at the North Idaho College Library.
Today we welcome you to the second of a 7-week series on a very, very important topic entitled Racism, Prejudices, and Progress. It is a very special privilege on behalf of the staff and myself to welcome the Honorable Julian Bond to our program, who is on our campus speaking today in this symposium.
What was it like to get your start as you did in the 60s, in the middle of the civil rights movement? You were young and black and Southern, and you came immediately onto the national scene. What are your memories?
Well, those are, as I think many of us recall, these were very exciting times, very emotional times. People in motion all over the country, not only in the South and the civil rights movement, but beginnings on the West Coast around Berkeley with the free speech movement, which eventually led into the Vietnam protest of the latter part of the decade. So it's just a tumultuous time. And I think among people who then were in their late teens or early 20s, there was a tremendous feeling of possibility of what could be done. That if you worked hard enough, if you organized enough people, if you raised enough questions about what you thought was wrong, then other people would see it and say, yes, we agree. And of course, sometimes that happened, sometimes it didn't. But more than anything else, I had a tremendous feeling of things that were possible, what could be done. And I'm not sure if today's young people have that same kind of feeling of their own possibilities of what they can do. But it was an exciting time.
Ada, you're viewed as a national Indian leader. You've been a motivating force to a lot of young people who have followed your struggle to gain the restoration of the Menominee tribe. You're considered a role model for young people. What would you describe what would you say are the qualities of an Indian leader?
I think each person needs to have an understanding of their own particular group, the history and the culture of their tribe, an understanding of the dominant society, and then the desire and the commitment to become involved and to deal with it. In order to do that, one needs lots of energy, dedication, intellectual honesty, and education so that one can understand and cope and work with the dominant society, endurance, intellectual honesty, courage. These are not only necessary for Indians. These are characteristics that all good leaders need to have. And the ability to take risks, both personal and professional.
As more information came to light about the order, concern mounted among the people of Kootenai County. A public meeting was held, attended by 40 or 50 people, including Keith Gilbert. The presence of the white extremists at these meetings caused then-President Bill Wasmuth to ask all members of the task force to sign a statement of belief prior to speaking publicly at these meetings. The task force later decided that this was a violation of the First Amendment, and the requirement was discontinued.
This was one of the few times that we found ourselves in trouble with the media, who called this action a violation of the basic rights of freedom of press, etc. We took a different tact after that and drafted a statement of purpose and began using that statement in public meetings and with the media. Soon only those who agreed with our convictions participated in our meetings, and the problem was short-circuited, was taken care of. In short, this statement said that the people of Kootenai County were not racist, would not in any way support Richard Butler and the Aryan nations, and would oppose their hatred and their violence by positively pursuing the protection of the rights and freedoms of all citizens of this county, of this area. We also found it necessary to restructure the task force organization in order to channel the energy of the community more productively. The committee structure was enlarged to 6 committees, strengthened so that the work of the task force could be pursued through these various working groups. We ended up with these committees. Victim support. You've already heard about the beginning of this committee with Ann Salisbury Brown and Jenny DeLong. It continues to be a vital part of the task force and the work of the task force. The second committee was community response. This committee was formed to provide the community with a productive avenue of responding to the presence of the Aryan nations and to counter the bad image that the Aryan nations were giving to our community. Skip Cook was and is synonymous with the Committee of Community Response, and she's here to tell you a little bit more about the working of that committee.
It was in the second phase of the Aryan Nation harassment that we recommended the production of a poster. We wanted something that could be displayed throughout North Idaho, giving the silent message that the task force was here, that we cared, and how to contact us. Although we were all in agreement with the need for a poster, we struggled with the decision on who should design it. Some of us thought that a professional advertising agency from out of town should do it. Finally, in a decision backed by our need to face our own fears and to give ourselves the confidence that we as a community could confront the evil in our midst by ourselves, voted to do it ourselves. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. It depicts the faces of North Idaho, the blacks, the Hispanics, the Asians, the Native Americans, the Jewish, and the white. The caption reads, "North Idaho is for everyone." With the creation of the logo, the task force finally had a visible and recognizable identity. The poster was first produced in 1985 and is still well received today. It is used on stationery, in real estate advertisements, on posters, on T-shirts and parade floats, billboards, brochures. It was meant to remind minority neighbors that the people here really supported their right to be here.
The entire task force and the Community Response Committee especially managed to turn the frustration and anger of the community into positive energy for the promoting of human rights. And it's this accomplishment that I am most proud. Who knows what might have happened if that energy had turned destructive or if that frustration had been allowed to churn in the hearts of the people of this county. What became the slogan of the task force was born out of this spirit. Saying yes to human rights is the best way to say no to prejudice. The third committee was the Education Committee. Recognizing that the education of children and youth is crucial for the long-range elimination of prejudice, the task force has always been seriously committed to working with the school systems to strengthen and to implement good social justice educational policies. Especially successful were the materials used throughout School District Number 271 in preparation for Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebrations. Tony Stewart from North Idaho College can tell you more about these educational efforts.
For 6 consecutive years, beginning in 1986, the task force and North Idaho College teamed up to co-sponsor the largest attended Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration in the state of Idaho. The King events held annually in January, including several parts. First of all is a children's program that is sponsored by those organizations along with the school districts in North Idaho, and each year over 1,200 students are in attendance. The formal program that follows includes a keynote speaker, the choirs of North Idaho College and neighboring high schools, along with essay contest winners, drama productions, film production, and a food festival. The Coeur d'Alene School District and North Idaho College, along with the city of Coeur d'Alene, closed their doors in 1986 to kick off the celebration with thousands of people in attendance. It is always a great way to start the new year in North Idaho.
The fourth committee was legislative. This committee successfully pursued major legislation, especially during the 1987 session. Among the legislation passed that year were the Domestic Terrorism Control Bill, which limited the paramilitary training practices of hate groups, the proclamation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday as a commemorative holiday in the state of Idaho, a civil remedies amendment to the malicious harassment legislation of 1983, which allowed victims to file for civil remedies if they were attacked, and the establishment of a Hispanic Commission for the state to represent the largest group of minority people in the state of Idaho. The fifth committee was legal. This committee was charged with assisting law enforcement with bringing criminal activity to light and criminals to justice. It was also responsible for answering the legal questions of the task force. And the sixth and final committee, Public Affairs Speakers Bureau. This committee is responsible for arranging public speaking engagements before various groups throughout the region. Good public relations and extensive use of the media and the sharing of information through the media have been and continue to be a serious goal of the task force. Most important, however, was the expanded approach of the task force at this reorganization time. We faced not just the radical expression of bigotry that was made most visible in the Aryan nation's activity, but also the day-by-day prejudice of our community. For both of these activities were violations of the rights of some of our citizens. Through the task force, the community made its commitment to oppose bigotry and to work to eliminate prejudice, for injustice to one of our citizens was seen as injustice to us all. The independent spirit of the citizens of North Idaho is matched by their concern for respect for all persons and by their drive for freedom from oppression for all citizens. This expanded approach included a much more public phase of the task force, convinced that racism was never successfully opposed by silence. The members of the task force spoke out loudly and clearly with strong voices. The media was very helpful in providing one of the vehicles for getting our message through to the citizens of the area, to the members of the Aryan nations, and even to the people of the country at different times. Incorporated into this public voice was a very positive thrust. We stressed the richness of diversity. We stressed the positive changes brought about by the civil rights movement and the dignity and worth of every human being. All of the attention given to the Aryan nations and their violent activity provided the attention grabber, if you want, that we needed to get the attention of people so that we could speak to them the message of human rights. For us, it was not a matter of who was most powerful or of position one over another, one group over another, but it was a basic belief in what was right. Whether one's conviction stems from acceptance of the principles of the Constitution that all are created equal, or from a basic belief in human persons that understands that we must treat each other with justice and peace if we're to survive as a race on this dwindling-sized planet, or from a faith perspective that believes that God has created all persons equally in God's own image and likeness, the truth is still the same. It is right to treat others with respect, dignity, and justice, the task force believes. It is wrong to oppress others, to deny them their rights, or to act violently toward others. It is this basic conviction in what is right that provides the task force with its strength and energy.
By the end of 1985, the task force had indeed taken the initiative in the struggle against hate groups. No longer did the members merely react to the actions of the hate groups. They went out into the community and faced the problem head-on. Current task force president Tony Stewart describes some manifestations of this change.
As mentioned earlier by Marshall Mend, the leadership of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, upon learning of the crime sprees in 1983 and 1984 of the Order and the arrest of the Order members in late 1984, as well as the death of Order leader Robert Matthews in a shootout with the FBI on December the 7th, 1984, made the decision in early 1985 to significantly alter its focus from an organization that had basically reacted to incidents of harassment to a task force that would now initiate many visible community activities. One of our activities was the educational programs that I've already discussed in this program. In 1986, the president of the task force, Father Bill Wasmuth, proposed an exciting and novel idea. He proposed that we bring together a 5-state celebration with the states of Wyoming, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana to have a one-day human rights celebration in the city park of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The celebration did take place in 1986 and again in 1987 during the month of July. Each year, the day's events included a speech by the governor of the state of Idaho and proclamations and messages from other Northwest governors, telegrams from many organizations, along with letters from those same organizations, and local governments, municipal groups, ethnic foods, art, and readings. There was a special feature during the 1986 celebration. Coeur d'Alene attorney and later the president of the Kootenai County Task Force, Norm Gissel, coordinated a campaign to invite each county and city in those 5 states to join with us in the adoption of resolutions that would support the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and their own state constitution in declaring the equality of all persons. The many city and county resolutions that were adopted were on display at the 1986 celebration, as well as received with great publicity by the media throughout the Northwest. These resolutions sent a strong message throughout the Northwest that all hate groups would be opposed and equality and justice would be supported.
The Kootenai County Task Force was presented with a unique problem. The white separatists, of which the Aryan Nations was only one group, believed that they could establish a white separate homeland in the 5 northwestern states. We in the Kootenai County Task Force knew this, but we believe that others in the northwestern states did not know. In planning our human rights celebration, we wish to educate the people of the 5 northwestern states concerning the threat that the white separatists posed to us and what the white separatists had done in the past in furtherance of this goal, including the activities of the order. We thought the most important people to reach with this message were the city councils and the county commissioners of the 5 northwestern states. We drafted a letter addressed to all the county commissioners and the city councils, about 1,000 letters in all, telling them of the white separatist designs on the Northwest and of the activities of the order. We ask in our letter that the county commissioners and the city councils pass a resolution in support of their own state constitutions and of the United States Constitution. Well over 200 cities and counties responded to our petition, and including all of the large population centers in the Northwest. What was interesting and of substantial value to our efforts was that in many communities, after the arrival of our letter, it was sent to a subcommittee, usually a Ways and Means Committee, and they would discuss this letter and make recommendations to the city council or to the county commissioners. This would cause a news article. Once the letter arrived at the city council level or the county commissioner level, discussions would ensue, and this would cause another round of newspaper articles. Then editorials would appear, as well as letters to the editor and general discussions in the community. The impact in the Northwest of these letters was very significant because of the news media coverage and the subject matter of the letters.
I hope you will be with us again next week for part 4 of a 9-week series on human rights honoring the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. I hope you'll be with us at that time.